In this video, I will show you how to set up database using Docker in IntelliJ IDEA, how to add multiple users that will have access to your database, and how to manage their permissions. Remember that you don't necessarily need Docker to create a database when using IntelliJ IDEA. However, Docker can be a very convenient tool for setting up and managing database instances, especially if you want to create isolated and reproducible database environments for development and testing purposes. This video consists of 3 parts. In the first part, we will connect the Docker to IntelliJ IDEA. In the second one, we will download the image and create container. And in the third one, we will set up databases, create multiple users, and manage their permissions. So let's get started. Connect Docker to IntelliJ IDEA. In this section, we will set up IntelliJ IDEA to work with Docker. First, you want to make sure that your Docker is up and running on your computer. If you don't have Docker installed on your machine, go to the Docker installation page in the description of this video and do it first. In IntelliJ IDEA, Docker features are available via Docker plugin. If you use IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate like me, your plugin is already enabled by default. If you use Community Edition, you need to install Docker plugin from the marketplace. Select IntelliJ IDEA, Settings, Plugins, and type in Docker in the search bar. Once it's installed, you can go to the Docker settings on the left panel and click the plus sign. This will automatically detect the system you are on. For me, it's Mac, and all you need to do here is press OK. You should see a connection successful message at the bottom. When you go to Services window now, you can see Docker there, and you may click Connect, which is a green arrow. Download an image and create container. Under Docker icon, you may see all images and containers running on Docker. I currently have no containers running. Let's pull MySQL image and create a container. For those who don't know, an image represents standalone software package that includes everything you need to run the software, including its dependencies. So if you download MySQL image, it comes with everything needed to run it. A container, on the other hand, is an instance of an image. You may think of it as an isolated runtime environment for your application. You can pull the image by right-clicking on images or typing into Images console. Once the image is pulled, you will see it on the list under the images. Right-click on the image and pick Create Container. You can also use the plus sign in Services window to do it. This opens Container Configuration window. You can also edit it later when the container is created. Name your container here and go to Modify Options drop-down. Here you will set up environment variables like database and root password. This database will be your default one. Our container is created. You would also want to bind ports so you can reach MySQL database outside the container. This is available under Modify Options, Bind Ports. For MySQL, we use 3306 port. Now all the setup is done, click Run. When you go to your Docker application, you may see the container is up and running. Setting up database, creating users, and managing permissions. In previous section, we created a container with MySQL database. It's time to connect to it. Click on Databases icon. If you don't see it in your IntelliJ, navigate to View, Tool Windows, Databases, and the database icon will pop up. Click the plus sign to add new database. Select the data source that you want to connect to. In our case, we want to connect to MySQL. Now, remember the root, user, password, port, and database we set up in previous section? We will use them here. We actually don't need to populate database here as root will have access to all of them. Click test connection, it works. Now, since we are connected, we may execute queries in our query console. Let's create a sample table. After running it, we got a success message in the console. But if you go to our database window, you don't see the tables. We actually need to go back to settings and specify the database. After that, we will be able to see our table that we just created. In the query console we just used, we can execute any SQL commands. As a root user, we can create databases and users and grant them permissions. We just created database DB1. Let's create database DB2 and DB3 and users user1 and user2 to demonstrate access and permissions. I will show you two ways to do it. The first one is in a query console and the other by executing query directly in my container. To create a database in query console, we simply write create database db2 and execute it. To create a user, we simply write a query create user user1 identified by and assign the password here. In our case, password 1. Now, let's perform the same tasks, but directly in the container. To create a database and user directly in my container, we will go to our container, right-click it, and select exec. Then create and run. Here, little window pops up. We need to log in using our root username and password that we set up earlier in step 2 of this video. After successful login, you will see a command line in your terminal. The same commands that we run in a query console can be run here. So let's type create database db3 and create user2 identified by password 2. I wanted to show you both methods as you may not always need to use query console in IntelliJ IDEA, although it's more user-friendly. When you go to our database window now, under server objects and users, you should see all the users that were created. You may need to restart the container if you created user directly in the container. So I will go to container, right-click and restart it. And now, after refresh, we can see all of the users here. Root, user1 and user2. Last thing we will do is to give our users permissions to the databases. Let's give user1 access to db1 and user2 access to db2 by executing the query grant all privileges. And we can test it immediately in our connection window. You will see that user1 only has access to db1, and if they try to access database 2, they cannot, so they will get a message access denied. I'm giving user2 access to db2, and let's test it. As you can see, it works as expected. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comment section if it was useful for you. Also, I put all relevant SQL commands that we used in the description of this video, so if you need them, they are there for you.